Hi, I'm Andi Simon, and welcome to On the Brink with Andi Simon. As you know, my wonderful listeners and viewers, I'm a corporate anthropologist, and my job is to help you change. I want you to see, feel, and think in new ways so you can get off the brink. And the idea of bringing on good people with great ideas is that their stories become very influential in how you change your story, and your life is lived in that story. And so I want you to get some new stories so that you can begin to see what other people have done and you can as well. Today I have with me Joan Ford from New Zealand. And we are a global podcast. I've had people from South Africa and Guyana and all kinds of places. It's so much fun to share. But let me tell you a little bit about her. And she's smiling at you if you're watching the video. I promise you're going to hear all about her story because it's a big one. You're going to hear from Dr. Joan Ford, and she'll tell you about that doctor part too. She has served in the New Zealand Army, completed an MBA and a PhD in leadership. She started her own business and is raising two little boys who are growing up fast. She has advised corporate and government organizations, including the New Zealand Army, and her research and ideas are all about improving the working world we have been. Wonderful, transformational. It's like a series of these podcasts now are all about the future of work, changing work, building better managements for the future of work. We are going through something that is transformational, and it's not just the fourth industrial revolution. It's how humans adapt to change, and they hate it. So she's going to help you love it. So she is deeply passionate about all people having their best work and used her research and leadership to start the hashtag work school hours. And we'll talk about her book as well. This is a movement that is very important to help people understand the impact of what they do on others. And she developed her belonging, autonomy, and purpose leadership model, which is a very important one for you to listen to, understand. Part of it is very anthropological. It's about belonging, autonomy, and purpose. And if you know much about Daniel Pink's work, that's what people want. They want mastery, autonomy, and purpose. So we're getting lots of good research about how to do this. She's a Kiwi Bank New Zealander of the Year. She's a local hero, person of the year, and she's a recipient of the prestigious Sir Peter Blake Leadership Award. I think you're really going to enjoy today, like I enjoy all of my podcasts. But Ellen, it brings a fresh perspective all the way from New Zealand. I must tell you, it's the afternoon here and it's the morning there. And so, bright and shiny, Ellen, thank you for joining me today. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much, Andrea. It's lovely to be here.
Tell us, and our listeners are waiting to hear, who is Ellen Joan Ford? What are you all about? What's your story? Please give us a little bit about your career and your history here.
Yeah, sure. So I started my career in the New Zealand Army. So I was super lucky. I spent 10 years serving as an engineer officer. So it was amazing. I got to lead soldiers in New Zealand and around the world doing really meaningful stuff. I loved my time in the army.
Pause.
Um,
How'd you get
yes.
into the military? What drew you in?
Oh, there was this really clever ad on TV when I was
Go ahead,
um,
please.
it really was. So I was 10 years old, Andrea, and there was this ad and it was a play on the words army and arm me. And
Uh,
it said things like arm me with experience, arm me with education, arm me with pride. And it had all these things and it finished in this really catchy tune that said army with a future. And I remember at 10 years old, I was like, that's it, I'm joining the army. It's got everything I could possibly want.
I'm glad you're sharing that because it was a significant event for a 10-year-old to have an inspiration, and your brain went, shh, that's what I want to be. Now, please continue. So you went into the military and particular branch, and how'd you figure your way through there? This is really cool.
Oh, so um yeah, so joined up as an officer cadet. So did my sort of officer training, which is both a lot of physical training, as you can imagine, a lot of fitness, living in the field, learning military tactics, and I also did my undergraduate degree in business during that period. And towards the end, before you graduate, you get to put in your preference for what corps or what kind of unit you'd like to go to. And I selected engineers because I thought there was quite a good balance between you're still kind of at the front and you get to see some of the action, but there's a lot of variety. And so I got lucky, Andrea. I got the call that I wanted and loved it. And I'm not saying everything was sunshine and rainbows, but what I can genuinely say is everything I saw on that ad as a 10-year-old girl, I got to do.
So the
It was,
army armed you with education, leadership training, and life experiences. Wow.
yeah, it was incredible. And I think the highlight for me was leading soldiers and feeling like I was having a positive impact on them. And also overseas deployments where we'd go over, I got to serve in Afghanistan, did a lot of work in the Pacific. Often there'd be a natural disaster there, and we'd go in and help rebuild. And it was just awesome. It felt like really meaningful work we were doing. I loved my time in the
It
army.
sounds like that was the purpose part, the belonging and autonomy tied into it as well, didn't it?
Oh yes, actually, yeah. The work we did in the army was very full purpose. And that really, yeah, I loved that. Like, of course, I did it because I had my own enjoyment out of it as well. So, it wasn't completely selfless. I got to experience and learn things, and that was good for me. But I liked that the work that we were doing was to help other people. And that was, yeah, that
Meaningful.
was real joyful.
So as you now, how long did you stay there? 10 years?
Yes. So from age 18 to 28.
And then what happened next?
And then, so as I was coming out of the army, I did my MBA, and then I moved into the corporate sector. So I worked at a logistics company, leading a team there for a period of time. And then I went into another organization doing business consulting for exporters. And while I was doing that, I did my PhD, basically in the middle of the night. And I did it on leadership because, I had been a leader in the army. I'm really passionate about leadership and really about the people side of it. You need to know lots of things as a leader. You need to know how to be strategic. You need to know a whole lot of technical skills. But I was really excited in the human part of leadership. And so I did that. And actually, Andrea, I shared with you beforehand, I did my PhD. Honestly, it was just for a personal challenge. I thought, well, I've got my master's. I want to go and do the next one up. And I had no intention of becoming an academic. I didn't even think I was going to use it. It was just this personal challenge, which, by the way, is not a good reason to do a PhD because it's actually quite hard work.
Having completed mine, it is very hard work. You're supposed to work hard. It's a rite of passage, right? That was really
Yes.
cool. Right. So, and then, and that's so interesting. And then, so you got it. What did you discover during the research doing it? Because that I thought was well worth sharing.
Yes. So I did. So the research was on leadership. And with, as you know, you've got to kind of narrow your topic. So I looked at leadership of women, and that was just purely because that, narrows down the population, and I am one. And then I looked at leadership experiences of women across a whole lot of different sectors. But my case study I did on the army. And again, that was just really pragmatic, Andrea. I had people that I could interview. I knew something about the topic. And it was at the end of that, I realized that while all these women had amazing experiences in the army, as did I, so that's really important to me to say there was lots of positive things shared. There was also there were also some recurring themes of negative experiences that were gender based. And so I thought actually, Andrew, this became a little bit of a theme in my life. I don't know if I'm allowed to say cruss words, but I got irritated. I thought I'm annoyed that the army is not treating everyone as well as they should. And so I want to do something about it. And so I ended up basically moonlighting. So I was still working as a business consultant by day. Um, I had my first baby at that point, and I advised to the chief of the New Zealand Army for about 18 months, sharing the findings from my research, but more importantly, giving recommendations for change because I think, we can do it better. The army can be more inclusive for women. And oh, by the way, that'll be good for men and the mission as well. So that
Great.
was kind of my first foray into uh, having some ideas and being passionate and wanting to change things. And so that was kind of my first go at doing that, I guess.
Well, I don't think that should be underestimated because if you listen to your foundation, you were a doer and learning on the job experientially, and then you became an intellectual academic studying it and pulling together the insights of other women. I'm curious, being a woman who's been an EVP of a bank and other things, do women lead differently than men?
Oh, that's a good question. So I like to think of it as that we all lead in a unique way. And so we
Good point.
can say there are feminine approaches to leadership and masculine approaches to leadership. And they get those titles because of stereotypes. So typically, women lead in a feminine manner and men lead in a masculine manner. But I'm very careful to point out that that's not always the case. So I don't want to say, oh, women lead like this, because actually some don't. But what I did find in my research is the majority of the women did lead in what I would describe a more feminine way,
Mhm.
really relationship focused, really collaborative and inclusive. That's my style of leadership as well. And that was that was different to what the army would often teach us as
Yes.
leaders. We
Yes.
were taught to be very directive, very sort of measured, firm, kind of command and control, which didn't always feel authentic or natural to the woman that I was interviewing. And I'm sure there'll be men who feel that way too. I just didn't interview them.
Yes, I know, but this is really important as we move along on your own personal journey because um, uh, I do think that women are different than men, you know, and therefore their relationships with others and how to mobilize them, provide them with direction, enable and facilitate. I often thought of myself as, I was EVP, but I was an enabler and I was a facilitator, a collaborator. My job was to get it done through others. And I was hardly ever a command and controller because it just felt so silly. These folks knew what they were doing. They just needed to know where we were going. And so it's a very interesting observation. Was the military interested in what you were doing? And then we'll come back to your new book and your program and so forth. But I'm curious about, was anybody interested?
Yeah, so that was actually the really heartening bit. Yes. So the chief of army, he's just finished actually, so there's a new chief of army now. But General Boswell, John Boswell, was at the top seat at that point, and yeah, he really did. He wanted to know the findings. He and and his senior leadership team wanted to increase the representation of women in the army. And I said, well, if you understood the experiences that we're having through my research, I think that would be useful. And yeah, I briefed the senior leadership team on several occasions during that 18 months. The chief of army had his big conference, which all the leaders across the organization came to, and I was the keynote speaker, sharing
You.
this research. And I'm certainly not sitting here and saying, yes, tick, I've solved the army. That would be a gross exaggeration. But I'm genuinely, Andrea, I'm really heartened and actually really proud that they did take on a lot of the recommendations that I made. And so there have been some really tangible changes, which I think is great.
I think that's really remarkable. They listened, they heard, and they did. How exciting. And so
Yeah.
you moved from being in the military to now being an authentic authority on a topic of importance to them. And where did that take you next?
So after that, and this is, I'm talking, 4-ish years ago, um, I got asked to speak at a few different events. And this was back when I was, not a professional speaker. This was just, for free. And they would ask me to talk about my experiences of serving in the military, doing my research, and then advising to the military. And so I did. I shared lots of different stories and exciting things about being in the army and working as an advisor to the army. And one of the things I talked about, which was actually, to be fair, quite a minor point in the overall talk, was around the challenges of being a working parent.
Ah, how
And
interesting.
it was after that, Andrea, totally not intentionally, all these parents just started reaching out to me. I kind of got bombarded with stories because people thought, oh, well, Ellen's interested in this, and I am. And it was in a space of about 6 months, I had more than 500 sort of stories, and they were they were not as academically rigorous as a PhD set of data, but the stories, I kept hearing the same one over and over. And I had this other moment of thinking, I'm annoyed. I don't like these outcomes that they're sharing with me, and I don't want that for me or for them. And so I'm going to have to change the world.
Oh gosh. Now what a great, transition from an area of interest to, oh my gosh, your market is coming to you saying help.
Yes. And I had no idea that it was my market at that point. I was, I,
And they didn't know they had a hero.
oh, well, no, so actually, if I share really quickly, Andrea, the three basically categories. So, and it was mind blowing to me how many occasions people literally fitted into one of these three groups.
Uh-huh.
And it was either parents would tell me that they just couldn't make the juggle of working in the paid workforce and being with children. The juggle was too much, and so they were forced out of the workforce.
Hmm.
And I mean paid workforce there. And this is not people that made a conscious decision that I would like to be exclusively with my children. These are people that they were forced out of paid work. And often, the cost of childcare didn't add up to what they could earn. So that was sort of category number one, not a great outcome. The second one were parents that were working full time, but then they talked about the sadness of missing so many important moments with their children. So
Uh,
they missed being there for school pickups, they missed the swimming sports, the athletics carnivals, they missed the school holiday periods, and they just constantly felt bad that they missed so much. And then the third category were parents that worked part-time.
mhm.
So you think, oh, okay, this could be a good balance of the two. But what always happened in this scenario is that the parent would work less hours, get paid less, but then there'd be no reduction in what was required of them. So, their KPIs, their responsibilities stayed exactly the same. And so they just became really efficient. They would get their job done in less hours. And Andrea, these people, they didn't come to me to share their hard story. They said, oh, Ellen, look, I'm the exception. Look, I'm so lucky. I'm so fortunate to be in this position. And I thought, there's nothing lucky about getting a pay cut to do the same job. This is this is gaslighting at a societal level. Um, no, this isn't okay. And so,
Now you had that epiphany happen. I think this is fascinating. Where'd you take it?
so yes, it was actually so really specifically, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, Andrea. So I remember this. I was up breastfeeding my baby. So Monty was, I don't know, maybe 10 months at the time, and Toby was 3. And I remember just sitting there down the lounge, dark, Monty's breastfeeding, and I was just marinating on all these stories. I thought, I don't like any of these outcomes. Either being forced out of work, working all the hours and missing your kids, or getting paid less to do the same amount of work. I thought none of these, I don't want this for my future. I don't want this for me, and I don't want it for other people. And so I'm going to have to do something about it. And I didn't have it all clear in my head at that very moment, but I was like, I'm going to make this my business. I want to change the working world. I want to make it better. I know that it's got something to do with leadership, and that's been my background, leading in the army, corporate sector, research on leadership. So I knew it had something to do with that. And it was about the construct of work, how we, the way that we do this 9 to 5 is not feasible for a modern workforce. And so, yeah, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I was like, I'm gonna do something about this. I'm gonna call it hashtag work school hours, and then the rest unfolded from there.
Um, I I love epiphanies because your mind is working through a problem, and then all of a sudden it says, "I got the answer! I got the answer! I got the answer!" And now do it. So hashtag work school hours turned into business speaking, a book. Tell us about it because it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. So my leadership model is belonging, autonomy, and purpose. And so I believe that for people to thrive, actually, Andrea, to talk about what you said when you were leading as an EVP, So I say on stage, I believe that a leader's job is to create an environment where their people can thrive
Hmm.
and then direct that thriving energy at the task that needs to be achieved.
Hmm.
So I don't think leadership's about commanding, controlling. I think leadership's about getting your people to be able to thrive and then direct that. Oh, okay, this is my little boy Monty's just come into the room who's homesick from daycare today.
And I put them in my hand in case they want to put them on.
Thank you.
For those of you listening and watching, Ellen's little boy came in at a perfect time because this is about the balance between work and being a mom, and her little boy is sick. And what a wonderful opportunity to demonstrate, of course, you can do both. So I'm going to turn it back over to Ellen to tell us some more about how she's building a business around her leadership with hashtag work school hours. Ellen, help us.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. That wasn't on cue, but Monty kind of demonstrates the point, right? He's in daycare 3 days. He's a bit sick today, so he's home. And I I like to think that just because I have a child who has needs doesn't mean that I'm not effective in the workforce. And this is what so many parents, and I'll say it was especially mums, the majority of my research was on mothers. They were constantly made to feel that they weren't a good worker unless they could sort of almost pretend that their kids didn't exist. And I don't like that. So into the leadership stuff. So I was saying I think that leaders create environments where their people can thrive. And what they need to thrive is a sense of belonging, they need some autonomy, and they need purpose. And what I realized is that parents were not experiencing belonging, autonomy, and purpose because it was almost like you would belong at work provided you sort of ignored the fact that you had children. So that's not actually belonging. We lack autonomy because we're trying to pick up our kids from school at 3 o'clock, but work finishes at 5 o'clock. It's just this horrendous mismatch. And purpose, we've got these competing purposes. I have a purpose to be a really effective worker, and I have a purpose to be a really good mother or parent. And these things are in conflict. And so it was from that I started looking back at, well, why do we do work the way we do it? And the 9 to 5 or the 40-hour week, that literally came about more than 100 years ago. And it was in line with Henry Ford's car manufacturing era, incredible social progress at that time. But it was built on the assumption that every household has a dedicated worker and a dedicated caregiver. They were two different people.
Yep.
But that's just not society today, and it hasn't been for decades, like literally decades. Women have been in the workforce. The person who's the caregiver is also the person who's in the workforce, but we haven't changed. And so that's where hashtag work school hours was born. And I'll pause for a sec because Andrea, I go on, I get too excited. But what I will say is it's not as dogmatic as the title sounds. It's a principles-based approach where we focus more on outputs as opposed to hours, and we give people more flexibility. And I believe in it so wholeheartedly, Andrea, that belonging, autonomy, purpose, leadership, and hashtag work school hours principles can fundamentally make work better for so many more people.
Well, you're getting to the crux of the problem. Today, we're not an agricultural society and we're not a manufacturing society. And
Hmm.
all of the things that led to being off in the summertime for the farmer or working in a factory, as people did with a man who worked and a woman who stayed home, 40% of the children in the United States are born to single moms. That's
Oh,
a lot of kids being born to a
wow.
single parent, hmm, who is the breadwinner and the mom.
Yeah.
But we don't think of them as anything other than an employee. Men and women are the same. What I don't quite understand is why it's so difficult for people to understand things have changed and to change them and to think of it with humility and with kindness and with understanding, because I do think everyone would rise if only we thought of this as an opportunity to improve the lives of both our families. Why are kids not a central part of our society? You want kids, then let's help them raise them. But why does it have to be just the mom at home? Now, I will tell you, I raised two wonderful daughters. Mm, They were born while I was doing my PhD. You can appreciate that. And I was a
Yes.
full-time professor. And my husband and I would split the days that I was working and when he could help. And he was a professional. And somehow they're professionals and their kids are pretty happy too. So you can do it. But you need to have a mindset that said, that the place you're working cares about you as a whole person. And this balance between work and life, well, but isn't work life and life work? I mean, the whole thing is a time for a new story. I want to hear what you're proposing because I have a hunch there's a big story here.
Oh, I mean, everything you just said really resonated then, Andrea. And I'm a single mum.
Hmm?
So, in the last few years, I didn't start that way, but it's hard. My household depends on me earning an income,
Hmm?
and also I'm the primary caregiver of my children. And so I kind of use this phrase sometimes where we live in a society where we are expected to work as if we don't have children, and we're expected to parent as if we don't have a job. And this to me just seems bonkers. I think if we had a clean slate today and thought, how shall we structure work? I don't think any sane person would say, yeah, let's put all the adults on this schedule and we'll put all the children on a different schedule that doesn't match. I mean, that's just that to me is yeah, it's bonkers, it's insane. And what you said then about work life, I think, well, we have life, and inside our life we have different commitments. Work is one of those commitments. Looking after our children is another commitment. And also people who don't have children, they also have commitments outside of work. So it's all about how do we look more holistically at life and figure out, well, how do we do the work bits and the other bits we need to do? And I really talk about this as a leadership challenge. So in my book, I've got sort of recommendations and advice for parents to be able to make some change in their organization. But I'm really upfront about saying this is not a self-help book to help parents with more time-saving tips. This is actually how do we systemically change how we do work. And so I talk to leaders and help them understand if you lead with creating belonging, autonomy, and purpose for your people, the hours that they do actually become so much less relevant. If we get really clear on what do we want our people to achieve, what's the outputs, what's the deliverables, what's the purpose for that, how do we give people some autonomy and flexibility to do that and make them feel they belong as whole humans, the sort of question of where did they do their work, what hours did they do their work becomes really so much less relevant if we just focus on the tasks that need to be achieved. And I also think that when we have the autonomy to kind of manage our own schedule, we are all as individuals the most effective people
Yes,
at determining our own schedule.
yes, we are.
And so, yeah, if you give people that autonomy to be like, hey, I don't really care when you get your work done, just do it,
Yeah,
they'll get it done. It
yeah.
just might not be in a 9 to 5 window.
Now, this is so interesting because one would think this is simple and easy, logical, makes a lot of sense. You have half the workforce. I don't know what New Zealand is, but in the US, 51% of the workforce are women. 65% of the college graduates are women. Over half the doctors are women, half the dentists are women, 65% of the accountants are women. You get my drift? There are a whole lot of very smart women. And for those who do not have children, they do have a life after work.
Mhm.
And those who do have children, they often have parents as well. I mean, there are complexities in life. It isn't a simple box. And now it's a time for us to rethink because there's so much talent. How do we leverage the talent with innovative thinking at a time when we have AI and other kinds of systems? How are we going to transform society in a very healthy way so that people can be happier? And I think happiness could be a really cool benefit of all of this. Don't you think? I mean, isn't it time that women and men are happier in what they're doing and how they're doing it? Hmm.
Oh my, yes. And that's, I mean, kind of my genesis for this was that I was sad and hurting that so many parents were sharing these stories and they weren't happy. And they were just kind of barely surviving, not
Yep.
thriving. And so I want all of us and myself to have really joyful, thriving experiences. But the thing that gets me so excited is that it's commercially smart.
Yes.
So I'm not sort of saying, hey, businesses, be nicer to your people, and that's going to be sort of a burden for you. I'm saying, no, treat your people better and they'll make you more money.
Yes.
Happy people genuinely deliver bigger profits for the organizations they work for.
Well, they're
So I
very
think that's exciting.
engaged and they want to help. They're mobilized and motivated with a common goal of making everybody better together. This is so
Yes.
cool. Cool, cool. I do want to talk about your book for a moment, and I am watching our time, and I can talk to you a lot about what you're talking about because I love the conversation. But I do think it would be fun for you to show the book and talk about what's in there for parents and for companies.
Yeah, sure. So this is my book. I'm very excited. The cover's beautiful and colorful, which I love. So it's called hashtag Work School Hours, a revolution for parents, workplaces, and the world.
Wonderful.
Um, and there's three parts of the book. So the first part is sort of what's the problem and how do we get here? So it talks about the historic nature of work and how we got to this position where we're in this sort of mismatch.
Yep.
The middle section of the book is all around what's the solution? What is hashtag work school hours? What isn't it? And what it is. Talking about the principles based and how it can benefit society, how it can benefit organizations. So it's all about the what it is. And then the third part of the book is all the practical bits of how to do it.
Ah,
And it is the third part of the book is, I'd say, most of that third part is geared towards leaders. So it's how will you implement this? And I've got tons of examples from lots of different sectors. So what I like is knowledge workers, it's probably kind of easy to think how you'd apply this. But I've got examples in here about how to apply these principles to shift workers, to manufacturing companies, to construction, to farming. And so I think that's really cool that it's how do we apply this everywhere? And the other bit in that third part is geared specifically at individuals. And that's all about giving individuals advice on how they can approach their managers and say, hey, I want to deliver these great outputs for you. I want to do it a little bit differently. And so I think there's good stuff in there for leaders and there's good stuff in there for individuals.
are you seeing momentum build on the transformation? You're talking about a great transformation. And are you seeing those wonderful little tips of the iceberg in New Zealand, or is it really percolating all the way through? What do you see happening?
So the progress is not as great as I'd love it to be yet, but that's because I want everything to be fixed yesterday. So,
It's not that hard to
but
think about fixing it tomorrow. It's easy. Just change the hours, right?
yeah. Actually, but what is neat, Andrea, the way that I know that this is getting some cut through is that there are more and more businesses booking me to come and speak.
Ah,
Now, I take that they know that I'm the hashtag work school hours woman. They know that I'm the belonging autonomy purpose woman, and they are booking me to speak in their organizations. Now, that in itself gives me hope that they wanting to do this. So, you wouldn't book me to come and talk if you weren't open to doing work differently. And I get booked to do workshops to help companies with how they can specifically apply it in their place. And there's traction in that. I've got actually what's quite neat. This is how I can almost measure progress, which is quite tricky. I want to change the world. It's quite difficult to quantitatively measure KPIs for that. But I get feedback every now and again that I just came out of nowhere and someone will say, hey, I heard you speak, or I listened to you on a podcast, or I read your book, and we've now made some changes at our workplace. And I'm like,
don't you
yes,
love it? Yes, yes, yes.
that's like
Well, you
that's
you
why
know,
I do this.
change and changing the world, you need to do one small win at a time. And as we're finishing up, I want you to tell folks how they can get your book and how they can reach you for some wisdom. But as the listeners or the viewers are thinking about this, I think you should send to me or to Ellen, your small wins. A little at a time will move the world, and don't expect it to be. You have a battleship, you have an oar. It's hard to turn it with an oar, but one little bit at a time, as long as you know where you're going can get it in the
Mhm.
right direction. And this would be so amazing. I love the fact that it isn't an either or because men and women will both benefit from this,
Yes.
right? I mean, men have other interests also. And there's no reason why they can't earn a nice living and get good results and not have to punch in and punch out for 8 hours. Except in the US, there's some laws about this as well, but we can work on all of this. This is really cool stuff. So let's wrap up. One or two things you want to tell the folks so they don't forget, and then how to get your book and how to get a hold of you.
Okay, so kind of a takeaway if you're in a leadership position, I'd really love you to think differently about instead of monitoring how many hours your people work, get really clear on what are the outputs you want them to deliver. I think that's the biggest takeaway and the best sort of starting point for leaders is forget about counting hours, think about what are the outputs you want. And also for the leaders is then get your team involved. Say, hey team, these are the outputs that we have to deliver. This is our purpose. How might we do this a little bit differently?
Yep.
So that would be, I think, a takeaway for leaders. For individuals, and so it's not just parents, it's anyone who has something they care about outside of work. Know your worth. So if you are working less hours, if you are delivering the same outputs, there's no reason for you getting less pay. And so I think it's about knowing your worth. And if you are currently in a very rigid workplace, think about if you want to change that, go to your boss with a win-win. Don't go to them and say, hey, my life's really tough and I'd like more flexibility because my life's difficult. Go to them and say, hey, I want to do this great work for you. Can I do it differently? And can I maybe trial this? So that would kind of be my two takeaways for leaders and for individuals. In terms of accessing, oh, what's that? Sorry?
Okay, please go ahead. Go ahead.
In terms of accessing the book, so you can buy the book on my website, which is my name, ellenjoanford.com. Also, workschoolhours.com will get you there as well. My goal isn't to sell books. My goal is to change the world. So I'm genuinely, anyone who hears this, if you get an ebook from my website, so go to the shop, you can either buy yourself a paperback, but if you want the ebook, I'll give it to you for free. Just use the code. It's today00. So those 7 characters, today00. If you put that in, you can get my ebook for free. And all I'd ask is that if you learn something good, please tell people about it. I can't change the world by myself, but we can all do it together.
A step at a time. Now, is today without capitals, just all lowercase?
Actually, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Perfect.
Either way will work.
Good. And the name of the website is ellenjoanford.com or .org?
Yes, ellenjoanford.com.
Good. Perfect. If they want to reach you, would it be best to get to you through your website, or are you a LinkedIn person, or how would they find you best?
Oh, yes. So, yes, my website's got all my contact details, but I am on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And my name for all of those is Dr. Ellen Joan Ford.
Perfect.
So, yeah, please reach out.
Ellen loves to speak, and I don't think it matters where you are in the world. She has a message and a story to tell you. I'm going to wrap us up. It's been a pleasure, but I also know that it's time for our listeners to think about how to apply this and act in a way that they can build a better world. And purpose is really important today. You know, what is your why? What is it you're doing, and why does it matter? And if you think about Ellen's story, and those of all the people who came to her saying, man, how do I fix this? People want to be good. They want to be happy. They want to have happy kids. They don't want to sit at home and play video games, although some do. Most of them really do want to have a meaningful, purposeful job where they belong to something that matters. And it's time for us to build a better world that does that. I will tell you, since I'm a corporate anthropologist that helps companies to change, and Simon Associates is, we've been in business over 20 years, helping companies change. Change, the brain hates to change. And so, as you're thinking about this, your brain is going to fear it, flee it, fight it. You need to, or appease it, or you need to overcome that. It's a very nice survival instinct, which is don't change. Well, yes, we have to. And when you change, you're going to say, now, how do I do this? I said, figure it out. You'll make it up. You won't be perfect, but nothing today is either. So working 9 to 5 is not perfect, but if you had the flexibility that you need, then you could begin to see what is more perfect for you and figure out ways of belonging with others who are trying to do the same. And at the end of the day, work will get done, quality work will get done. And who knows how many hours it should take. You probably don't need that coffee break all the time with somebody sitting at the water cooler talking, although talking is really good. So it's time to rethink work. I love it. Sounds like a new book we should write, huh? Love the idea. So call us if you want a hand helping Ellen and Joan Ford change, because we would love to help you visualize and deliver on a whole new way of work for men and women in the workplace and at home. Um, you can find out more about us at simonassociates.net. Our books are at andisimon.com, A-N-D-I, simon.com. Amazon has all of our books, and On the Brink, A Fresh Lens to Take Your Business to New Heights was the catalyst for our podcast. And I'm so thrilled that you came today, whether you're listening or you're watching. I love to share with you ideas that are helping you get off the brink. That's our job. So don't sit around and think about it. Try it, do something. Small wins win, and it's a step at a time going somewhere better. You can't turn this battleship with an oar, but you can turn it, and you just need to start. So my note to you is take your observations, turn them into innovations. Ellen said something really important. She had an epiphany. You will too. Your brain is learning a whole lot and it wants to go, whoosh, let's do this. So I'll say goodbye. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you so much for coming today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I hope you had fun.
Oh, yes, thank you, Adria. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Any last thoughts, or shall I say goodbye for us?
No, I think that's what I've talked.
And having your son come in was so timely and appropriate, and I think it was just plain old fun. So look up ellenjoanford.com and let's have some more fun making home and work and life all happy. And I like to be happy. Goodbye now. Take care. Bye-bye.